Now the meeting is open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, my husband received a water bill from his parents' property showing that water was being used. He called the company and told them the house was vacant, so he didn't understand what was happening. They sent someone to investigate and reported that there was flowing and that we probably had a leak in the house. We went to the property and we saw that the water meter was moving, but it was moving so slowly that you could barely see it move. My husband called the plumber and explained the problem. And I heard the person on the phone tell my husband that it sounded like we would need a leak detection machine, which would cost $400. And that since the home is older, if they didn't find the leak, or if they did find the leak, there was no guarantee that another leak wouldn't come up. And because the house was on a slab, we most likely would have to jackhammer it. And one negative comment after another. I began to feel very discouraged. I walked into the kitchen, I looked out the window, and I saw a very large oak tree in the backyard with moss hanging from it, and next to it, a blooming magnolia tree. Right at that moment, I turned to God and I said, Father, you have never turned your back on me, and I refuse to turn my back on you. Not a very poetic statement, but a very effective one, for the weight of discouragement lifted immediately. And all of the wonderful blessings that we have had unfold during this process came to my thought. Saw the negative comment as an attempt to diminish God's blessings, and I was not going to have it. 2 days later, the plumbers arrived, and they looked at the meter, and they said, we've never seen anything like this. But that statement had no effect on me, because I knew that God was completely in control. They went through the house, checked the bathrooms and kitchen, and one plumber said, there is something about that master bathroom. I think I should look at it again. He did. Found the problem, which he said, I've never seen anything like this. It was a simple fix with no leak detection machines needed, proving to me once again that divine mind was and is in complete control. I'm so grateful to God, to this church, to Mary Baker Eddy for the readings tonight and for this healing service. Thank you.
Thank you. Liuba from Ohio, go ahead.
Good evening. This past spring, we had a problem with wasps swarming outside our home, especially near both the front and back doors. We had to be very careful entering and leaving the house. My practitioner said everything has its proper place. She used the 91st Psalm where it says that we shall not fear the pestilence. This statement stood out strongly in my mind. Within days, I noticed fewer and fewer wasps, and very soon they were gone. I realized God's protection is always there. I'm so grateful to my practitioner for this and the understanding I am gaining. Thank you so much for tonight's reading, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Hi. Last night I read, or rather my husband read to me, Mrs. Eddy's words in Christian Healing, quote, the fact remains in metaphysics that the mind of the individual only can produce a result upon his body. The belief that produces this result may be wholly unknown to the individual because it is lying back in the unconscious thought, or a latent cause producing the effect we see, and that's unquote. After 50-plus years of exposure to Christian Science, it seems like I should have understood this clearly, but I didn't. I'm so grateful for the new starting point. Thank you, Plainfield, for encouraging daily reading from prose works. Thank you, God, for Plainfield.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for those healing messages tonight. Recently, I was alerted to a condition that could possibly make it more difficult for those seeking our church to find us on the internet. As one ponders the reasons for such action, the terms jealousy, fear, distrust, rivalry, and lack immediately come to thought. Many years ago, I heard a Christian Science lecture that reminded us of one item. It was, quote, "We cannot beat the hell out of any foe. We must love the hell out of him." Now, to quoting from Mr. Young, first, last, and always, the great need is love. Lack of love is the only trouble in the world today. Love alone will heal the distrust, jealousy, fear, ignorance of the race, and seeing this will heal lack and disease. This day I devoted thought to Christ Jesus' statement found in Matthew 5:44. Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty from California, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the readings tonight and also for the beautiful music at the beginning of the service. Last roundtable kind of got me thinking, and I have given this before, but it bears repeating from time to time. Many years ago, sometime after I became a member of the Plainfield Church, I called a Plainfield practitioner about my concerns about paying all my bills. I had gone back to school and now had a decent job and a bunch of bills. The first thing she said was to be grateful for those bills because it means God has given you the means to pay them. She went on to say to pay God for church first, as well as the practitioner. And then she went on and said to get grateful and ask God how much to give. She also mentioned that the hand that's open to give is open to receive. And in Science and Health it says, quote, "Giving does not impoverish us in the service of our Maker, neither does withholding enrich us." End quote. Well, I began doing this. I would sit down and get grateful, remember God's blessings, and ask God how much to give. An amount would presently come to mind, and so I would then write the check to church and then to the practitioner. And I would do this first before I paid my other bills. And lo and behold, there was always enough. Gradually, I was able to give more each month to church and more per call to the practitioner. Needless to say, those bills have all been paid, and I am able to give a good amount to church each month. There is always a plentiful supply from God. I have been so blessed by this experience. Jesus says in Matthew, quote, "Freely ye have received, freely give," unquote. For me, this was about loving and trusting God with my whole heart, and also about truly expressing gratitude for this Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, which has changed my life and blessed me and mine over the years. Very grateful for this, for Christian Science, the Plainfield Church, and for practitioner help. Thank you.
Thank you. Coleen from Massachusetts, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the readings and the music tonight on God, Life is Eternal. I'm so grateful to God for leading me to this church and to this church for leading me to God. God and this church, His church, go hand in hand and they're reciprocal to each other. This church is love made manifest in all love's multitudinous ways, which radiates out and blesses all who find it, like me. And I'm forever grateful. I am learning how to understand God better and my relation to Him as His image and likeness. And I'm learning to look through visible manifestations and find God the real cause in everything. One idea that I've been learning here is to handle the weather. This was brought out at one of our meetings. And the other day I was taking my dog for a walk, and it started to rain. And I wondered if maybe I should turn back. And I got the angel thought, no, this is a good idea. My dog loves his walks, and we should go forward. Well, the rain began to stop, but there was still a lot of dark clouds overhead. And so again, a thought came, well, maybe I should cut this walk a little short. Then again, I heard this command, continue, go forward, and do your full normal walk. And so we did. When we were almost home, about a half an hour later, the sun shined so brightly over our heads. It was really wonderful. And the dark clouds were only to the left. And then soon the sun was shining everywhere. I was so grateful that I couldn't just say thank you enough to God. I'm learning to trust God for everything. And these small occurrences that happen during the day give me confidence to rely on God wholly for everything, for all my needs, and to know that God is all. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you. Shukra from Maryland, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you. I just want to give gratitude and thanks to God for the blessings and the healings, and most of all, a couple weeks ago, I didn't understand why, but I was extremely joyous and happy and free. I felt like a free. And then hours later, I had received a text the night before that was incomplete. And when I asked into the text, I found out about a healing of somebody I love very dearly. And in that moment, I knew that I had a fear that I had never acknowledged, never gave voice to, never gave power to, but that had been part of my life for a very, very long time. And in that moment, I remember God's healing and prayers and just the knowledge that God will always answer all prayers and alleviate all fears. There's never any doubt, no matter how much you do not acknowledge it to be. Thank you very much for the readings and the gratitude for the ability to have this moment to share my stories. Good night.
Thank you. Dayday from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. The beginning of this week was challenging for me. I was suffering from an aggressive suggestion of allergies and sinus trouble, which left me feeling irritated and fatigued. In addition to this, there were a number of issues which came about at work, and although I managed my way through, I was feeling drained and almost defeated. I worked consistently with the scientific statement of being and various truths found in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. This morning I woke up feeling much, much better, and I was determined to have a better day no matter what. While on my way to work, I checked my phone and saw a message that read, "We have a problem." and then went on to explain what the problem was. This was something that had been escalated to my director yesterday, and even with this in mind, the first thought that came to me was, there are no problems. This comes from the truth that I've learned in this church, that there is no challenge or issue that can come about that God does not already have the answer to. And most importantly, that there is no power apart from God. So I went on my way smiling. I got to work and immediately began to address the so-called problem. I worked on it periodically throughout the day, and it was finally resolved just before I left this evening. In addition, I was able to manage the various tasks that came about today with more confidence and courage and an overall sense of calmness. I'm so grateful for tonight's readings on life and to be learning what it means to truly live with God, calling on Him, trusting in Him, working for Him, and thanking Him always. Our recent roundtable mentioned the meaning of the word enlisted, and I'm grateful for all that we've been given in this church to fight the good fight in order to gain the victory over anything trying to keep us from working for good. I'm so grateful for everything that's going on in this church. It has changed my life, and it means everything to me. Thank you so much for tonight's meeting and for all. Good night.
Thank you. Candy from Wisconsin, go ahead.
Good evening. Tonight, I would like to say how grateful I am to this church. Thank you for the guidance to understand and utilize Christian Science, and for the explanations and demonstrations of the all-powerfulness and ever-presence of God. Also, thank you to my practitioner for her love, help, encouragement, and constant, and I mean constant guidance. Now each day presents wonderful opportunities for me to trust and glorify God. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Thank you. I'm also very thankful to Florence for the reading. Recently, I've been thinking and praying as well that God will help me to grow more on compassion. I was reading the story of Jesus Christ, and I found out that maybe not, but to my understanding, that compassion was the key to all the healings that Jesus accomplished, that we knew about in the Bible. Because in some of those healings, the Bible says that He had compassion on them, then He healed them. In many of them, He had compassion first, then He healed them. I remember many years ago when I was in Africa, and things wasn't that great for me over there. But my faith in God was very, very great for me. But Mrs. Evans in this church at that time, it was her compassion that brought me here. She told me once that there was a point when she got the message and it came clear to her, and she knew in her heart that she had to do this. I did not ask her to do it. It was a compassion that she felt in her heart. And I was a result of that. And also some compassion shown to me from a lot of members in this church. Many of them are not here, and many are still here today. it was their compassion as well that made those outcome possible. And that's the lesson that I'm learning. Sometimes our prayers are not enough. We can pray all we want. Apostle Paul called it love. If you don't have this compassion, our prayers probably will be a waste of time. We need more compassion, especially now. Not especially to those we can see or those that relate to us direct, or those we can feel, or those that look like us or speak our language. Our compassion can go beyond that, like it was in my case. It went across the Atlantic. That was more than 1,000 miles away. And it came to me. If God can do that for me, through the compassion of this church, God can do it for everybody, no matter where they live on this planet. But we have to do it. We have to feel it in our heart. This world needs this compassion. Not just for those that we relate to, but those that we do not relate to, those that don't look like us. That's the true work of a Christian Science or a Christian scientist. It's the true work of man. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I'm so happy for what God has done in my life, what God is doing in my life. And I will continue to pray that God will help me to grow more in compassion so that I will be more useful to my fellow man. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff.
The Webster's Dictionary of 1828 has the definition of the word healing as curing or restoring to a sound state. I was definitely not in a sound state of mind when I walked in the door of the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. In fact, I was out of my mind, and I was seriously lost in a world of pain and trouble. The pain and trouble started when my wife decided to file for divorce. We had beautiful twins, a boy and a girl. After their birth and many wonderful years raising them, it was all going to end in a divorce initiated by her. I felt like the biggest loser. Without my best friend, who was I to turn to? Seeing my life through a glass darkly, I had no clue that by walking in the door of the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, I would find a whole new family. I shook hands with the welcoming people here, sat in a pew, and tried to listen over the negative voices in my head telling me my life was over. I began attending services, Bible studies, and began studying our textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and began to open up to my new church family. I applied for membership soon enough, which meant making a solid commitment to follow Christian Science as my one true path. The good news is my marriage was saved. My wife and I are still best friends and growing stronger every day. I would like to express my gratitude to Mary Baker Eddy for her everlasting gift of Christian Science to the world, and to my fellow members, the Christian Science, Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, and for practitioner help. It is divine love that meets every human need and that brought healing. Or, as the 1828 Webster Dictionary states, restored me to a sound state. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Oh, good evening. Tonight I would like to offer gratitude to my practitioner who has been working with me concerning the belief of fear. In the past, going to the dentist, even for routine checkups, was often a very difficult thing for me to do. In the last 2 visits, I was told that I had inflamed gums in part of my mouth. My practitioner said that that was only fear. This week, when I went to the dentist, my thoughts were completely different. And not only was there no report of inflamed gums, the whole visit was harmonious and even joyful. I got to talk to the hygienist about her new baby boy and talk with the doctor about New England and Cape Cod. I prayed before going to the office, and part of my prayers included what a testifier said about declaring from the Bible, quote, "This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." And Mrs. Eddy, quote, "To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings," end quote. And what a blessing. Thank you for the music and the wonderful readings.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I'm very grateful to be a member of this church and for all the blessings that Christian Science has brought into my life. Right before God brought me to Plainfield, I was in a really low place. At least a portion of that was because I had my identity wrapped up in being employed, being a husband, and being able to provide for my kids. And yet here I was, without a job, a wife, and was running out of the ability to provide for my kids. I remember thinking, nobody wants what I have to offer. While growing up, it became apparent that being loyal and being able to work hard were important traits to have. So I didn't question that. I just did my best to be loyal and to work hard. Then, after many years, here I was feeling that recipe I based myself on was flawed, and there was no path forward. And then God showed me the only path forward when He brought me here. At this church, I learned that loyalty is important, as long as it is loyalty to God. I also learned that hard work is important, as long as it is, once again, for God. I was willing to come here and do whatever God asked of me, and was so surprised that the skills I had before were needed. It was already proved sufficiently to me that no one else in this world wanted what I had, but now I can see clearly that God was guiding me all along the way, so I would have the tools to be ready to help this church now. I think about this frequently, as it not only keeps me very grateful, it helps me to see that I wasn't unredeemable trash as I thought I was. In fact, I was like most people are, just doing the best I knew how to do until I learned better. I keep that thought each day because I know there are people out there who need God and need Christian Science, just as I did. And I'm so grateful that this wonderful church is here, ready to help show them the only path forward to God when they are ready to see it. What an inspiring mission to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, tonight I'd like to give my gratitude for Mrs. Eddy and her revelation, and what a powerful message she has given us about this subject called death. I know that the world over is one of the things that is feared so much. People don't even want to talk about it. But I'm so grateful for the statements of truth that she has given us. Statements like, there is no death. It is unchristian to believe in the transition called material death. I have pondered some of them very much, and I must say I am so grateful for the transition in how I view this experience now. And because of that understanding, how I'm able to comfort those who seem to be so terrified as I used to be. I am grateful that through the experiences, Christ Jesus' experiences, the Bible, all that it tells us about it, and Mrs. Eddy's explanation and the commands and the questions that she's given us, if we heed them, we really will add death to one of the fears that we can all overcome. So grateful for all the testimonies, the music, and happy to be here tonight.
Thank you.